Gather round, friends. It's time for Officials' Tales. Hosted by three retired sports referees that coaches throughout Northern Ohio knew as the Three Blind Mice. They are authors of the book called Officials' Tales. So let's meet the authors and your hosts, Jimmy Borgia, Rick Hall, and Don Nardecchia for today's edition of Officials' Tales. Now here's your host, Rick Hall.
Welcome everybody to tonight's episode, and a special episode it is. We got a little special shout out to a camp that Coach Gottfried puts on every year. Very special to all of us because it has to do with young people and filling the place of missing parents, and it's very, very important to us. We also are going to go over questions that were sent in from our viewer, and I thought this would be a great show, and so did we. Questions about basketball floors we love to work on, and some we don't, coaches we like, and some of our favorite haunts that we happen to go to after the games, and why. So without further ado, I'm bringing on our partners. Here we go. Hey, Nardo.
Hey, Rick.
There it is. Hey, sorry. I know this is a part 2 now, but let's try this again. How's South Carolina? I know you said something about all kinds of pollen and all kinds of stuff.
It's all collected in the screen porch. We try to use the sweeper to get it off, and more than a couple of dust cloths over time, but it's the end of the pollen season. There's hardly any more. It started early February. Usually it's mid-February. It started the beginning, and it's been just a lot of fun. So now we'll clean up the screen porch real well and be set for the rest of the summer and the fall.
There you go. We got those maple things that are, the whirly things flying around here. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. All right, let's bring on our third wheel with the one eye, Mr. Rehab himself, Jimmy Borgia. There he is. Look at that. Look at that face.
Yeah. I'm mobile. For some reason,
sitting right at the cooking
when
place.
When I was at my house, it was working good. And the last couple shows, I had to drive across town, park in Rick's driveway to be able to speak to everybody.
I hope you don't have to go to the bathroom while you're out there.
No, I went before I left the house.
Good.
I could always have Sherry run out a pop bottle or something.
Right.
Now, anyway, before we get into all that,
now just to let you know, it's raining fairly hard. So if you ask a question of me and I don't respond right away, ask it again.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's raining really hard and you can't hear us. Right. Yeah, that's it. Right, Don?
Right.
That's exactly
right.
Anyway. Let's get into this story about Coach Gottfried and the camp that he runs. I think it's a great thing that he does, and it's good that he continues his quest to help people. So, all right, Jim, go right ahead, and here's some information.
Well, it was down there 2 weeks ago to Columbus to their 25th banquet for Team Focus. And I really think this, as Coach Gottfried talked that night during the banquet, when he was 11 years old, he lost his father. And he was the middle son of three brothers. Joe, who I believed had coached basketball at Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
Southern Alabama.
And a younger brother, Mark, who also had coached college basketball. The one thing with Coach Gottfried is at the beginning of my sophomore year, first day back to school, my father passed away. And he pulled me aside to let me know that he had went through the same thing. It helped a lot. just so happens our first game that week was the night of our first football game, the day of his funeral. My uncles were talking about going down and watching the game, and I had no plans on going. They said, well, he's got the best seat in the house. I eventually went down, and I caught a pass. I scored a touchdown. So, he was there in the front row. But this team focus that we're talking about now is something for young men, not necessarily the loss of their father, but maybe the father's not in the picture right now for some odd reason. Over the 25 years, they had talked at the banquet that they have covered and put through over 8,000 kids. And I think that speaks volume for itself.
Absolutely.
And they have a camp at Ashland University. The information that I received from Rocky's wife is that this camp starts June 21st through June 24th. They take care of the kids down there. And believe it or not, they teach them some manners, which is lacking big time here the last few years. They have motivational speakers come in and talk to them. And I think if you get a chance, I'm going to give you a couple numbers to get a hold of them to get an application. The cost of this camp, free. Everybody likes free. But here are the phone numbers. If you've got pen and paper, this is to Team Focus office in Columbus. 614-895-2131. Now, his wife gave me permission, said if you can't get this one, here's his cell phone number. 614-738-8108. Now, you need to get this application, and I would say the sooner you get a hold of them, the better, because she really didn't say that there was a certain number that they were going to allow at this camp. But I think it will be well worth it. So that's all I got to say. Coach Gottfried, hell of a man. He worked for ESPN. He had coached a few of Mike Stewart was one of his players when Coach Gottfried was at Pittsburgh. And Mike here lives in town here in Norwalk and sells cars at the Don Tester. So I would say this is it, but try to get a hold of their office and maybe give it a try, especially if some of you mothers would like give your kids something that would improve. Not that the mother hasn't done her job. So I'll throw it back to you guys.
Well, I'll tell you, Jim, before Don kicks in, I'll have you send me those numbers, and when we post the show, we will add those to the post. So if somebody forgot to write those down, they will be available on our Facebook pages and our YouTube page. So they'll be out there, and I hope that every young man takes advantage of this opportunity, especially when they're going through some stuff. Especially mental awareness. I think it's this month, I believe. Especially young people, because this is when everything starts. If we can get them on the right path now, we can have some great adults later. So, Don, go ahead.
Yeah, this group has their camp at Ashland, like Jim said. They have different groups, including one that is active in the Sandusky area. They have programs for them during the school year, generally after school, a couple times a month. where they work with the kids, making sure they're staying up on their homework, just things that might be missing at home. There's certain things that dads are there for. They're
Absolutely.
very important to growing young men. And that's what they're trying to do is provide a role model, someone to talk to for these young men. I know that a good majority of the kids that have gone through this over the years all had Coach Gottfried's home phone number if they wanted to call him for something, and he encouraged them to do that. Uh, Bill Hubens, that used to coach at Western Reserve at St. Paul, played softball for many years in town here. People might remember the name Bill Hubens. He coached after he left St. Paul. He went over to Oak Harbor, coached there for probably 25, almost 30 years. And I think he's still around, but there's a guy there, and he was very involved in the one over in Sandusky once he got out of coaching. And that's what a lot of these people that work for the team focus are all athletic. Most all of them are former athletes,
Sure.
and you know how much a father means to a young man between the ages of 10 and 18, and that's what they're looking for, 10 to 18. So if you know of someone that you might suggest this to, please do have them listen to this. Look it up. TeamFocusUSA.com is, I think, what their address is on online, and it's quite a good program. It's a very good program.
Well, now we're on to the heart of the show. We are going to start with the questions and answers, and it's not Jeopardy. So here we go. As per a viewer request, Officials Tales are officially answering some of the questions that he asked. Some were not because, we have to change the names to protect the innocent. So the very first question he asked, what was your favorite gym to officiate in? And prior to the show, I sent all this information out to the guys. And these are some of the gyms that they brought to my attention. As you can see, we have Perrysburg, Old Fort, Mansfield Senior, and one of my favorites, Toledo Central Catholic, because it's like the Taj Mahal. So now I'm going to lead it. I'm going to start with Don. Don, take one or two of these guys and tell me why you like to work here.
I'll tell you what, this was hard because there were a lot of good places, but
right.
When I thought of Old Fort, that came to mind first because the first time I refereed at Old Fort, they were on a high school stage, much like Main Street School in Norwalk, and just one of those very small, and they were very excited because the next year they were going to open up their new gym. Well, this very, very small school off the beaten path between Tiffin and Fremont had a real palace there. Individual seats on one entire side, collegiate length floor, and they had just a wonderful man that was the athletic director there, Big John.
Big John.
And you always felt very welcome there because if he didn't see you come in the door and walk you back to the locker room and chat for a couple of minutes, he got in there before the game started. And again, he was such a big part of that school down there. So that was one of the small gyms that the school now had a big one, and they had a lot of room on the ends, a lot of room on the sides, a wonderful place to work. And one that I, when I had to think back, have there been other bigger ones? Yeah, there have. But knowing the history behind that and how long we officiated there, and that was the first one of the new big schools, and it was one of the smaller schools that had it. Was just something that popped in my name, in my mind. Perrysburg's another one that I think. I don't think we ever had a bad game there. It was just the atmosphere and all was wonderful whenever we went there. Now, it's not to say other places weren't, and when I say places that I'd like, it's because it had all the comforts of home. And when I
Yep.
say that, for years we were out at junior high with camps and summer leagues, and even refereed out there a little bit before Norwalk moved to the new school. But that gym there was built when I was in high school, and that was phenomenal. Big, plenty of room and stuff. We kind of forget that we had that, but we didn't work there that much over the years just because we were from Norwalk. But just really, Old Fort might be the best of them all.
All right. Well, we're going to go on to Jim then. Hey, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Which one?
Like Don said, Old Fort, because through the years, and like when we first started out, we were on a stage just like uptown there at Norwalk High, on a stage, and when we got on there the first couple of times, as you had worked on other courts in the area, you would take off, run down to the other end, especially when you're doing two-man, and you would get so far because your body said, okay, you're far enough. Well, then all of a sudden you look down, well, heck, you're just at the foul line. So you had to take them couple of real quick steps to get on the baseline under, so you wouldn't miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
But Old Fort, like Don said, John Bergemeyer, couldn't say enough about John. He excellent fella. Love working over there. Especially, I like working over there because of the hospitality room, as my boys will tell you. It's funny as heck because the one year I had to do a girls' game over there, and then the following week a boys' game. Well, that night I walked in with the girls and went down to the hospitality room and was going up to thank the ladies, for running it, and to make sure we had something to eat. And it just happened to come across some snickerdoodle cookies, one of my favorites. And I asked who had made them, and the one lady said that she did. And I said, well, they're pretty damn good. And she says, I asked her if she was going to be there the following week for the boys, and she says, no. She said, my granddaughter's playing. So she said, what's your name? And I said, Jim. Got to the thing the next week, and by golly, I went in there. I didn't see no snickerdoodle cookies, and walked up to thank the ladies again. And I happened to mention snickerdoodle cookies, and the lady says, what's your name? I said, Jim. She said, wait a minute. She went in the back room, come back out, a plate full of snickerdoodle cookies with the thing for referee Jim. And I thought that was outstanding.
Yeah, I bet you did, because we weren't with you.
That's right. Well,
they'd always take care of us over there, just
absolutely. I always loved Old Fort.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I put up what I did. Perrysburg, there's actually some stories about Perrysburg in the book, FYI. Old Fort was always great. They always took care of us. We had some pretty memorable games over there. That's actually where we used our opening line to the coaches, you properly equipped, you're ready to play. We'll answer any questions, but any statements are going to be handled completely different. Well, they had a new coach one year while we were over there, and right after the jump ball, he started making statements. And I can remember looking at him in the face going, is that a question or a statement? And I didn't hear anything from him for the rest of the game. So just an FYI.
Yeah.
As far as Mansfield Senior, it's kind of special to me because I worked at my early career, especially at Pete Henry. Meant a lot to me. It meant a lot of good players along the way, Sanderson and some of the players there. And then working in the big gym and playoffs and such. And I worked, well, not with, but the same tournament time with John Gurney. And, it wasn't too long after that he passed. So that kind of means a lot to me. And as far as Central Catholic, I mean, it's the Palace. And it's actually one of the first times that Al Stellinger worked with Don and I. So that's also means a lot to me. So that was why. Now we're going to go on to what was your least favorite basketball gym to work at. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean the people were bad. It doesn't mean, it could mean the floor, it could mean the lighting, whatever. But this is some of the consensus that I came up with. All right, we have the Wellington Dukes, and I'm going to go over these for me, and then I'll let the guys talk. South Central Trojans and the Brookside Cardinals. Well, the Wellington Dukes, now this was way back when they had what they called the tartan floor. It was basically a glorified wrestling mat that was hard as a rock, and it was hard on your knees. And it got worse and worse over the years where it was popping up and there was dead spots. And, it is what it is. Now, South Central, basketball especially, everybody knows what South Central's like there with the three guys underneath the basket and all this. I actually have 2 stories in the book about South Central. Buy the book, read it. You'll love it. Brookside Cardinals. And again, no offense, this is pre-new school. We worked in a very dark, dingy, dungeon-like school because the lights were dim, because they were going out because they had no money. And they would dress us on the stage in a teacher's room or something. And it was not very cool. So, Don, I'm going to let you comment on these 3, or if you got a different one, you rock and roll, and then we'll go to Jimmy.
No, I had one. I had one school
Okay.
at South Central. It wasn't because any coach or any player. It was just that every time I went there, I didn't feel like the game was going properly. It was just, it wasn't all me, wasn't all my partner. It was just, maybe the games were competitive, but they weren't really well played at the time. And up until my last time, I was really satisfied with the way that game went. And, at the beginning of the season, a month before the season, we might get our schedules for signers. First thing I did is look to see if I avoided South Central. and if I did, I was happy. If not, I thought, well, I get a chance to go down there and be happy walking off the court once. So, I bet there's probably, I know I worked a number of girls' games there, and those that was not a problem. It was just the guys' games. I think some of it was there's no room on the end line, let alone to have people standing in the corners like that down there. The sidelines were really, really tight. And I can't remember if when we were in high school, if we sat on chairs on the floor. I think not. I think we sat on the front edge of the stage. But once they put those chairs down there, that they could not sit in those chairs without their toes being on the court.
Oh yeah,
and that's a problem we had at New London long ago.
Monroeville too.
Yeah. And so, but that one, it got into my head after a while down there. Now I agree what you say with Brookside. Always dark. Seems like you never saw an athletic director. Seems like probably had a different athletic director every other year, and they for a long time they weren't very good. So all those things kind of molded into the one-sided games weren't even fun to do. And Wellington, that floor, it was right after Michigan State won the national championship with Magic Johnson and that group. They had that floor up in the old field house at Michigan State. And there it gained a lot of popularity. It was kind of a fiberglass poured thing that had little like little flecks of something. It was like there were little pieces of rice built into
Yeah,
the floor
weird.
that gave you something to stop your slide from. You know, it gave you some
Right.
traction. But uh, they had one down at oh gosh, outside between Marion and Upper Sandusky. There was one at the school down there. I can't think what the name of it was. There weren't too many of them around, and there weren't too many that last. But I'll tell you something about that type of floor. I went up in about 92 or 3. I went up to East Lansing for a collegiate officiating camp. Went up with Robbie Lee and Sam Radel, two good old time buddies, and they still had that floor in Jennison Fieldhouse, and they had their new building, but they used 3 courts in the Fieldhouse, and Robbie went to Michigan State as a freshman football player as a kicker, and he said that Duffy Doherty used to have them kick footballs inside across the width of the building and aim to get them in, you know, the big openings, the portals where people would come into a section. He
Sure.
said, aim to kick them right there. You're kicking from here, get them in the portal. And it was not a fun place to referee. They said, do not wear basketball officiating shoes. Your knees will kill you. So we
Oh
all
yeah.
had just regular running shoes. I worked one game on it. That's all I wanted to work.
All right, Jim, you're up now. We all know that we dress in the teachers' lounge at South Central, so that's also a check.
Yeah.
So go right ahead.
Well, like Don said, I don't believe that the girls' games that were played there were as difficult to do as the boys because of the speed of the boys' game. And hey, Don and I had played at South Central when we were in school back in the early 70s, and they are still playing in that school. Money, the way things are passed, so they can get money to build something new. They've had problems. You would think, especially because at that time, South Central and St. Paul would be known to have very good games, and you would think that you would want to get a bigger gym if it would be possible. But again, people, when you put people into say, hey, we can get it, but it's going to cost you more in your taxes and more here and more there. And some of these schools for a time were getting to a point where it was going to be pay to play. Well, if mom and dad were going to the game and they paid $700-800 for the kid to play and they didn't play, then there was hard feelings. And I saw that, God, several times. And you were thinking, well, that's what they have here at this school tonight. So I don't think I'm going to have any trouble with the parents just because of the fact that if little Johnny or little Mary ain't playing, mom and dad's not going to yell at me because of that. They're going to yell at the coach. And over the years, they ended up changing that to participate. So there's that loophole. Same thing out to Western Reserve. I played in that gym back in the late 60s, early 70s, and Don played in that too. So again, it's got to do with money, and some people don't like putting that money. Not that they wouldn't want a better facility for their players and stuff, but certain things come first, I guess.
Yeah.
But I remember the first time I did a game over at Wellington, it's like, what the hell is this? And when you go to stop, you stopped. And that kind of screws up your knees and your shins and stuff. So.
Oh yeah. Well, here the next segment is our favorite coach. Now I threw up some photos of some of the people that I know that we all love to work with. I'm going to go ahead and start with Jimmy this time because we've been starting off with Don. We have, you know, this was kind of a consensus. So go ahead, Jim. Take a look at the photos.
The first thing I want to say too is the comment and how we got onto these questions and stuff. And this happened to be from the son of one of Don's old classmates who lives in, where does he live now?
Australia.
Australia. Now, here you go. He's in Australia. He sent this in for these questions to be asked tonight. People, you living in Ohio or in the United States, please, we would welcome your comments and stuff.
Yeah, questions.
But over the years, and I'm looking at the pictures that we got up here, and one that kind of sticks out. There's Robbie Sheldon up there, and Robbie he was a character, and to have coached two of his sons that are now coaches, Chris out to Western Reserve and Dave down at Colonel Crawford. And the first time me and Don and whoever was working with us that night, he was yelling, and I turned and looked at Chris and I said, "Is your dad here tonight?" He goes, "No, why?" And I says, "I could swear I could hear him yelling." And he looked at me and had a big smile on his face. But here we go. Jim Lawhead, Don and I worked Lorraine Catholic at with St. Paul out to the old junior high, and good ball game and stuff. And Don and I were on our best game. As we were leaving, Coach Lawhead had approached us and asked if we'd be interested coming up that way to do games. And the first things out of our mouth is yeah. And the following year, he sent us out some open dates, and we'd work there. I happened to be fortunate to work the night that he won his 500th game. The reason I could remember that is because they had 3 radio stations or TV stations out to follow this stuff. And after the game, boy, do you talk about a spread. I mean, there was food. I was hoping I had to get some baggies to put it in my big duffel bag, as my buddies would say. But yeah, Jim, and you know, there's a few of the other coaches around. My good buddy Dave Hershey, and Hirsch. First time I had him, he was coaching down at Plymouth, and he'll remember his good buddy Mark that he had talking to after the game. And every time I get a chance to talk or leave a text, I always say your buddy Mark, and he has a few choice words when he texts me back.
Oh yeah.
But you know, and then some of the girls that had coached in the area too. Julie Myers up at St. Paul, Tracy Moyer, Brenda Friend, and I'm trying to think down. Help me out here. Down to on Upper, Adrian Bell,
Audra Bell.
Audra. I'm sorry. But yeah, the first time that we had encountered her, we had a situation, and then from then on, it was. Glad to see you tonight, Mr. Nardecchia, Mr. Borgia. Like working for her. So there's plenty more that, you know, yeah. I mean, if we could go on and on. I mean, I had a few games with Mike Smith up at St. Paul and some of the real good coaches.
All right,
you got that handful. You always got that handful. And some of it, well, the fact is that some of us are approachable and others are not. As Rick is attest to this.
Yeah, I ought to know. All right, Don.
Yeah.
Well, I was glad to see Jim Lawhead, and for those of you that don't know, he's the bottom right, gentleman, bottom right there. I remember him when I was a freshman in high school. We played Lorraine Catholic, or Lorraine, it was Lorraine St. Mary at the time. And at St. Paul, we played up in that little gym up on the second floor there on Monroe Street. And a stream of Lorraine St. Mary students started coming in the door and kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. They brought a bus and they made the climb up to the second floor and filled the stands there. I remembered it was pretty impressive to me as a freshman seeing that happen. But he was a solid coach. You can just tell by some of these guys why they last so long.
Sure.
And how they get along with the kids and all. But Jim was one of my picks, and I had another one too that I just thought the world of. Up at Port Clinton was Tom Bodiger, and shortly after he gave up, I think it was just after he gave up, he passed away after he retired from coaching. But for some reason, I worked a lot of games at Port Clinton, and the guy did his job, didn't ride officials, always was pleasant to talk to. And from what I've heard from people that know more about him, the man is just they think of him as a saint up there. So Tom Bodiger and Jim Lawhead were the top of my list as far as boys coaches, and I had two girls coaches, and Brenda was one of those. She was at St. Paul, she was at Black River, she was at Oberlin, she was at Edison, and coached a long time, and always enjoyed working for her. And even in her retirement, she came out of retirement and coached the Norwalk freshman girls back in, I think it was probably 2015 or 16. And that was after the three of us had retired from officiating varsity games. But we were doing freshman games at Norwalk and at St. Paul, no traveling. When the first Norwalk game that we officiated that year, Rick, it was just two-man. Rick and I walked in the gym. Brenda was talking to her girls. She got up from whatever you're saying. She saw Rick and I walking up towards her. Her eyes about popped out of her head, and she got this biggest smile and hugged us both. And it was pretty neat because after all the years of officiating, we meet up again at the lower levels, and there's nothing wrong with working at the lower levels. One other guy for the girls games, and he coached in the early to mid '80s over at Huron, was Dick Winnis. And I just loved Dick Winnis as a coach. Didn't matter if it was high school girls basketball or coaching the defense over at Huron for the football team. He was a straight up guy, very respectful to officials. In fact, one of the games, maybe 2-3 years after they'd won that state championship, I was working for him, and just before halftime. I don't know who made the call or whatever, but he hollered out to me by name and asked me something, and I didn't think anything of it. I answered him, and at halftime he came up to me and he said, "I am so sorry for calling you out by name." He said, "I never do that. I don't like my girls hearing that. It's always Mr. Ref or Hey Ref." I said, "Don't worry about it, Dick. It's not a problem in my book by any means." So. Yeah. So there are my four that, I do want to also mention the coaches at the Norwalk schools, because through all their summer leagues and all their, the tournaments that they had, they treated the officials that came in there like family. Working the clinic at their camp, they always had food, they always had drinks for the guys. And it was, they engaged with the officials that we brought in. And, Mike Smith, who was there for the whole time of that at St. Paul, and his staff, Mel Brown, his assistant for a long time, Steve Miner, who's the head coach now, uh, and the guys at Norwalk, Kenny Brose and Steve Gray and their assistants. You can go right down the line. They all were great. We don't get to work their games, but they were great whenever we needed officials for something out there because they treated them right because they respected them and wanted them back. So,
yep. And I agree with everything you said. Brendan was awesome. Robbie was the show, and I actually told that story before about him polishing Big Mike's shoes. And Joe, Joe Baylock, Don and I actually worked one of his last tournament games before he retired. And he's well known in Ontario, and he's just a great guy, always fun to work with, kind of a legend. And it's funny you mentioned one of the Norwalk guys. I wanted to add Mr. Gray. This is for me. I've known Steve for a really long time. I actually officiated some of his games when he was a JV coach. So I've known Steve for a really long time. So, he's kind of a personal friend, not just a coach. And I was blessed to help him and the boys when they won the state championship, create their rings for them. And that's some pictures. As you can see, Mr. Thomas, his comment is, "This is what a real state championship ring looks like." And I want to get him and his wife on here. I have a lot of respect for Steve, and he's always a great guy. And I hope that we can get him on the show one of these days, and just put him to the ringer a little bit like he did us for years and years. So, it would be kind of funny. So, all that being said, now we're on to the favorite post-game meeting place food-wise. So we know Jimmy's going to have a dissertation, so we're going to go ahead and start off with Nardo. So go ahead, Nardo.
Well, my first answer was any Frickers, no matter if it was in Perrysburg, Maumee, Sylvania, Findlay, Fremont. Any Frickers was a good spot because you knew you were always going to find officials there, and it was one of the fun things for us when we would go up to the Northern Lakes League and work up there in the Toledo area because we knew we were going to see some of our Toledo friends we don't see very often. It all depends where the games were, which direction we were coming. If we were down like in Old Fort Tiffin, that area, it was Bellevue, and it would have been the Sports Hut, which is no more. One of the great places. They had plenty of Bellevue stuff in there, and always good food, cold drinks. Place we really enjoyed going. We got the varsity club in Willard. If we were down in Bucyrus, wanted to get home because Bucyrus had Baker's Pizza, which was a great spot.
Oh yeah.
In the early days, John Malcolm and the Press Box in Norwalk was a good place to go too. Good food that time of night and stuff. So Reedtown Tavern, I think in my mind that might be the ultimate.
Got your takeout order.
He's got the takeout order.
Hey, look at that shit.
Wait a minute, he needed a bottle. He said he had to go to the bathroom.
I was told you didn't pay the delivery fee, so you only pay cash.
Where's the tip?
Come right out to my car with us. Hey, all right. You know who she likes.
Reedtown Tavern after a football game at the end of October down at Seneca East. We stopped there. And there were 4 Elvises in the building. It was Halloween celebration night there. So having four Elvises in the building, that kind of holds a spot of right at the top.
Well, I'll tell you, for me, I loved them all. I couldn't find my favorite one. Was the place in Bellevue? You know, the sports side. Yeah, there was no pictures of that left, unfortunately. Frickers, obviously. Heck, I still go to Frickers. You know, and I almost did Saturday, but we had somewhere else to go. We had a baseball tournament in Bowling Green, and I'm like, oh. But my daughter and grandkids went, so, you know. Reedtown Tavern, it was always great. One of my wife's friends used to work there. Varsity Club, obviously. I mean, you know, and of course the pizza place in New London, my hometown. Yeah. It used to be owned by friends of ours, and I don't think it is anymore. But man, you talk about great pizza, great subs. Holy smokes! You get in there and get their special sub. Man, that rocks. But, you know, I loved them all. You know, and a lot of it was, guys, it was a camaraderie. Man, we'd sit around and talk and have a few beers and, you know, talk about the wars we just came out of. You know, and our famous gas station story started at Frickers, you know, where Don and I tell the truth, and Jimmy... You know, I don't know what the hell Jimmy was saying. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. But those are my favorite play. Reedtown. I mean, they were all great. I mean, we'd always come up with somewhere. The rib place, you know, it was always somewhere really cool. It was always cool to hang out with my brothers. So, all right, guys, just so you can't wait, here we go with Jimmy's dissertation. Because, you know, he's our food critic. Here we go. Go ahead, Jim. Oh, hey,
I'm gonna tell.
By the way, Sherry wants her tip. So
yeah, I didn't have no money. I got out the door and didn't have.
Oh, here we go. Standard fare for Georgia. No tip.
Well, you know, it's like Rick won't eat her cooking, and I'm, you know, I come over earlier today to give Rick the stuff about Team Focus, and here's her homemade. Chocolate covered peanuts and stuff. But, well, yeah, you know, I ain't gonna turn something down like that. Homemade. Sherry's a good cook.
That's not a meal. Watch that rehab now. That's candy.
Gotta have that sweet tooth every now and then.
All right, Jim. Give me your top two out of this list.
But you know, here it's like when Don and I were working, you know, 2-man at the beginning, and we had heard about New Regal and their ribs and stuff. Well, anytime we were down that way, we made it a point to get over to the restaurant. And the athletic director down there, Steve Bullion, his sister worked over at the rib place. So what he would do is come in and ask us. He would call over sometime in the fourth quarter to let his sister know that there's going to be a couple of guys that are going to be walking in there. They're going to have wet heads. So that's a dead giveaway. And to have that food ready for us. Right. And then Steve, Rick DeMoss, who was the coach over there, anytime we had New Regal on the road, and we would go over and talk to the visiting coach ahead of time, I would always, Rick, did you bring ribs? He'd smile and laugh, and I said, you don't know when you're going to need that call, you know? And he would laugh, but Don and I happened to be down at Ashland Crestview the one time. And, hey, you know, we're on the hungry side. So made a call over to New London at the pizza house there. And it happened to be the owner's his wife was a sister to one of my aunts. And, hey, we'll be there in 15 minutes. We'll have it ready for you. And, but yeah, like all these other places, the sports hut, great place to be. I mean, I didn't like the damn French fries that I always got, but I think Don and Rick always had something to do with that.
What?
But
what
yeah.
You don't get light ice? What?
Yeah. What? Oh, and I'll tell you, the Reedtown Tavern, the chicken tenders and the jalapeno poppers. Oh my gracious.
Oh yeah.
Always hit the spot.
Well, I tell you, we did have one question which I didn't put on here, but I'm just going to give you like the quick. He did ask about like what would be a rounded figure of how many games we worked over the years. I mean, I'm going to just give you a quick answer for all three of us. Thousands. I mean, you figured, thousands in basketball. I'm sure Don's in high hundreds in football. I'm hundreds in football. I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure we're well over 1,000. And together, we're probably, together we're probably 3, 4, 5,000 games, I suppose.
Easy.
I mean, I don't know, but just so you know, there's a lot of wear and tear on us old guys, and we kind of know what we're talking about. Well, 2 out of 3 of us do.
Yeah, I'm glad you took and made me and Don the ones that knew what they were talking about.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about One Eye Willie down there, but
right.
I don't know. Maybe that guy.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, so if you want to hear some more stories from the road and such, go out to Amazon. We have our book out there. It's called Officials Tales. We have it in paperback, hard copy, and of course the ebook for your e-readers. The color photos in there are absolutely phenomenal, and it's just really good. And it's also available today at the Common Good. I believe they're open today. And you can go up. They do a great job. They've got a lot of great products in that place. And it's not just our books. And they're great people. And I recommend them. So I think that's where we're going to cut this off tonight, guys, because it's getting about dinner time and the wife's already passing food through the window to the weirdo in my driveway. So
I'd like to make just a thank you to Anthony Mushet. He's provided some of those questions. It's stuff we think about, but when we get them from somebody, we say, well, they deserve an answer on these. So we thought these would be pretty good. I mean, we pulled some old names out of the hat for those too, but
absolutely.
But that's just where we are here in north central Ohio, and if you talk to guys from southern Ohio, they'd have plenty of stories for you, just like we do. But you want to see what makes us tick? The book will give you a good idea of why we did this, and what drove us to do it, as long as we did, and how the families handled it, and how we handled stuff on the court. A couple of very strange situations. A couple of one-liners back and forth. There's a lot of funny stuff in there.
Yeah, and for me, I want to say, well, Jimmy, you got something?
There was another coach after I talked about Western Reserve. I left John Spear out. John, excellent coach, great guy all around. Can't say enough good things about John. He was one of a kind, and sorry to had to see him go so early in life, because I think there's that possibility he could still be coaching.
Well,
maybe at the junior high level, but I know he loved to coach.
Yeah. And for me, I just I want to thank all you guys for watching our show, and for following us, subscribing to us, giving us questions, and and I want to thank God for giving us this opportunity and give me these guys to work with. They are a riot, and if you knew us personally, we have a lot of fun with each other. And I would be remiss if I didn't close the show properly. So, good night, Jim Bob.
That's the
I knew it would come back to bite me. I knew it would.
Stash.
Yeah. There you go.
If you were wondering, leftist Jimmy in his uniform, and the right was we're not sure if that's Jimmy or not.
Now this picture here is my sister. They were having a dance-a-thon or something at the St. Mary's School here in Norwalk, and they were trying to raise money for, I can't remember what it was. And I thought, you know what? There'd be people that would pay to take a pie and shove it in a referee's face. So that night, we raised about $400 or $500. So I thought that was a good cause. I could do it.
Why not?
What the heck?
With all that being said, I want to say good night to everybody from the Three Blind Mice and Jim Bob especially. And you guys have a great week. And God bless all of you.
One other thing, I wanna a belated Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. We didn't get to have it in there last week, so I hope you all had a great day.
Absolutely.
Every day should be Mother's Day.
I agree. All right, take care, guys.
Have a good one.